Welcome to Desert Well, a place where we gather like travelers, finding refreshment and community around life's most essential source. Throughout history, wells have been places where people pause their journey, places where they share stories and find the sustenance they need to continue on. But we're here because we've discovered something even better. Jesus promised that whoever drinks from the water he gives will never thirst again. That living water doesn't just satisfy, it becomes a spring welling up to eternal life. So whether you're navigating the challenges of family life, wrestling with questions of faith, or simply trying to live faithfully in a complicated world, we invite you to pull up a chair around this well. Here, we'll explore how God's unchanging word speaks into our everyday experiences, offering wisdom, hope, and the kind of refreshment that truly lasts. This is Desert Well, where life's conversations meet living water.
Welcome back to the Desert Well, again, where we're gathering around the well that is Jesus, both for conversation and to drink deeply from who he is and what he has done for you and me. And so today we are diving in again, as we did a couple weeks ago, to what might be a little bit of a seasonal episode for us, but a lot of us are coming along with us every week, so we're glad you're here. Today we are going to be talking about Advent. And not the Seventh-day Adventist, but Advent. So there's my bad pastor joke for the episode. Get that out of the way. I still think I need to make up a word later on. But I think let's just start well, I don't think I made one up when we were talking to Linda. Did I? I don't think so.
I don't think so.
Maybe we did. It's one of those, I forget what we've said and all.
Well, it's not a purposeful thing, so we can't force it.
That's right. It must be genuine. Otherwise, it doesn't feel real. So I think I'd like to start with just, in your experience, what I asked our lay ministers this last night, what and how does Advent bring you hope? Or why does Advent bring you hope as a follower of Jesus?
Well, it is the celebration, the expectant celebration of the coming of Jesus, right? The birth of Jesus. And so when I think of Advent, I always go back to kind of what we did growing up. You know, we had the Advent dinners, and then we'd go to church. So it was actually like confirmation, Advent dinner. And I loved that.
Really? You had confirmation, then dinner, and then church?
Yeah, it was wild. So
wow.
Like 4 p.m. I think was confirmation, 5 p.m. was dinner, and then church was after that.
It's crazy. I feel like we could not get anybody to sign up for something like that in today's world.
Well, I don't remember signing up for it. I was forced to do
it. But you said you loved it, so that's good. It wasn't a bad, forceful thing to do.
Yeah, like so we did like the Lutheran potluck thing, right, where everybody brings a dish, and it was that was still some of my favorite memories of growing up in a small Lutheran church was the potluck dinners, and like I know who made what, and that was always
and what to avoid.
Exactly, anything with onions. Out.
That's right.
But yeah, back to your question, just the hope that we have through Jesus, that he came into the world. Actually, I was just sharing with the staff a devotion from Lutheran Hour Ministries that was called Embedded, right? And it talks about Jesus's genealogy and how, you know, even in his family, like we're full of sinners, but yet he still is embedded in human history. He is embedded in the humanness, just like we are. And so he came to be with us by choice, right? And so I really enjoyed that devotional, and one reason why I shared that with the staff too. Just a good reminder that Jesus, you know, God himself decided that the best way to enter this world was in a lowly manger, right? As a little baby. And so there's definitely some humility with that we can learn from. So that's the hope of Advent, at least for me.
I want to talk about the other stuff that you did, but I want to plus one or a tap alongside of you on the like Jesus coming down. So we talked about, we're reading through the Augsburg Confession of the Book of Concord and our lay ministers. What does it mean to be a Lutheran? This is the most essential document, if you will, next to the scriptures, right? And in the third article of that Augsburg Confession, it talks about Jesus And last night, one of the guys said or noted how different this sounded. So the third article starts like this. Likewise, they teach that the word, I'm reading, this is why my head is turned, that is, the Son of God took upon himself human nature in the womb of the Blessed Virgin Mary, so that there might be two. Yeah, it goes on. But that language of took upon himself was significant for them. And I think they made a great point, because so often, at least in my mind, when I usually think about Advent and Jesus coming, today in chapel, we heard God sent Jesus when the fullness of time had come, or some translations say, at just the right moment, God sent Jesus. We'll hear that again tonight in our Tizay midweek service. But usually we think about it, at least I do. I have this image of Jesus, the Son, with the Father, and then all of a sudden God turns to him and kicks him, and he comes down into heaven. It's like all right, now go. And yet this at least paints it a little bit more differently. That kind of like how you said, Jesus wanted to come, was ready to come, and chose to actually come to earth. That, yes, was he obedient to the Father's will? Of course he was, all of those sort of things. But that it's also a desirous choice that he made as well, to actually come down to earth, to take on our flesh in the birth, in his incarnation, all those sort of things. So I'm sure I would have loved that devotion that you shared with the staff as well.
Yeah, it was great. And like, I love the history and how Jesus uses, well, God, Jesus uses broken people, right? And how, no matter how far gone we think we are, that we're not, that Jesus can use each of us in our sinful nature for the betterment of his kingdom, to bring others to know him. And so, yeah, and I think that we can all relate to that. And I think that's one reason why God chooses to use people that you would not otherwise think of or point them out as like, yeah, are you sure? Like, I always think of Paul, right? And how
Sure.
well, we talked about it before, right? How the first century Christians were like, really?
This
This guy?
The murderer guy? The guy who's killing people guy? That guy?
Yeah, like you're choosing him to speak to people? Like, okay. So to me, it's a comfort thing, right? To know that even when I mess up, that God can still use me and my messes to bring others to know him too. So
Yeah, one of the speakers at the Lutheran Educators Conference, LEC, that we were at when we recorded with Linda, had us all recite this like really long creed of action that he does. And I'm no way going to be able to recite the whole thing. So this was Tuesday morning. He spoke there, and it was like something along the lines of this. I'm paraphrasing from my memory, which is not perfect. And he said something like, I have decided to act trusting that God will bless me, and even though I might make a mess or something like that, that he can work through it basically and bring good out of it. But I've still decided to act that with God's help, etc., etc. And I love that about, I think, our faith, because in a world that's very performative, perfectionist, we talked a little bit about the Enneagram last episode or 2 episodes ago. Well, no, was the last episode? I don't even know. Whenever it was. And so I've started reading a book on this, and my Enneagram type is the perfectionist. And so I've just even been thinking more about this whole idea of, hey, feeling the need to have things that are perfect, and where does my faith come into that and say, hey, I don't need to have things be perfect before I do something, or I don't even need to believe that anything is going to reach any sort of perfection, but instead it's based on my faith in God and what he's able to do with whatever garbage, mess, fill in the blank that I offer to him or to someone else, that he's still willing and able to do and take from that and work it for not just good, but for his purposes. So yeah, we talked about that, but a central thing, I think, to our faith as well. So let's talk about practices. So you grew up going to Wednesday service. I don't feel like I ever did as a kid. I don't know if, I'm sorry, Mom and Dad, if you're listening to this and I did. I don't have a memory of doing that very often. So I don't remember going to Advent church, but the thing I remember having, and I have one now in my house, is an Advent calendar, right? And so for us in our house, that was a little felt thing that hung on the wall. It's one of those wooden dowels and the little piece of string, and you took out the little manger scene characters, and you put them on as the day got closer. And the thing now that I've noticed about them, though, is they all like stop on the 24th. So I have yet to find a Advent calendar that goes through Christmas Day, which, yes, I understand Advent is only through the 24th because then the 25th starts Christmas. But it always felt a little weird taking baby Jesus out on like the 24th and like put him in the manger, because we don't celebrate Jesus' birth on the 24th technically, right? We celebrate it on the 25th, right? So here's the pastor. Oh yeah, I'm not going to say we can't sing Joy to the World on Christmas Eve. Yes, we'll still do that. But Christmas Day is Christmas Day. Otherwise, what's the point of doing things on Christmas Day? So anyway, that's the thing that I remember most about growing up as far as practices is sort of Advent wreath, as far as practicing getting ready for Jesus. Is there anything else that did you have an Advent wreath? Did you do a calendar? Did you do any sort of like, I don't know, anything else?
Well, this is where I would say, forgive me, Mom, if I forget, because no, I don't remember anything. I mean, we might have done like the candy Advent calendars, but it was not something that we did, regularly. It was maybe once in a while if somebody gifted us one. And really the memories of Advent that I have with going to the Advent dinners was from when I was in confirmation. So that would have been, for me, 4th grade through 7th grade. So for 4 years, right? I have that memory. And I don't remember going as often outside of when we were in confirmation.
Sure.
But it would have been for roughly 6, 7, 8 years, something in there, that we would have done this, because my brother was in confirmation before I was. And so he would have gotten dropped off, and then we would have gone to pick him up. And when we were picking him up, we would have gone to church, and then we would have gone home. So yeah, that's really all that I can remember or recall from childhood growing up.
So nowadays in 2025, there's like an abundance of things you can do and things like that. So a couple of things that we do in our house, we do the seeking shepherd, or the shepherd on the search, or something like that, which that must sound like I had a little bit of a list there. A shepherd on the search. And it's we might call it an elf on the shelf alternative. So a less law, more gospel, right? So at least my understanding, elf on the shelf is like a behavior curb for children. The elf is watching like Santa's little minion, and he can see you wherever you are. Anyway, so we do the separate shepherd on the search, or something like that, the seeking shepherd. And basically the whole premise of the book is that the shepherd was going to go and see baby Jesus' birth, but went too early, got lost along his way, eventually found baby Jesus. And so now he goes and he's looking around all of your house to find baby Jesus, but he only, of course, finds him on Christmas morning, when baby Jesus is in the manger. And so it's a fun, go look around, find the guy, et cetera, et cetera. Another thing that we've tried to do, we do the Advent calendar, of course, too, the felt cloth thing. But then someone had gifted us a kindness manger, or I forget what it's called, yeah, I forget what the name of it is now. It's escaping me. But basically, it's hey, Jesus came as the gift to us, right? The good news, the greatest gift from God that God has ever given. And so as we get ready for Christmas, we do acts of kindness, and we get to fill Jesus' manger, so that then his manger is ready for him to be born into. And as I say that, it sounds very work heavy, like you gotta get the world ready for Jesus. But it is a good way. And I mean, we think about, go back in history, what was Advent for? Advent was for originally, I was doing some reading this morning, that it started a lot very similar to what Lent is in today's world, like very repentant, confessing our sins, who are we to deserve this beautiful, wonderful gift that God has given to us? And so I need to say, wow, I'm a broken, sinful person. There's no way I deserve this beautiful, wonderful gift that you give to us, God, in your son, Jesus. And there's some ways in which we do that because of the realization of that thing. So other than that, I don't know if we're going to try and make it to church. It's one of those things with 3 kids, it's tough. But It's talking about Jesus. We go and look at Christmas lights as much as we can because we love lights. But that's kind of it. And maybe we usually do different Advent devotional, at least as a family. Try and do, instead of just doing a regular Bible reading, we do a kids' Advent something. So, go ahead. You look like
Well,
you're
I
about
was
to say
going to say,
something.
like for Beck and I, well, I was going to say this is our first Christmas, but it's not our first Christmas with Malachi. It's our second. But
He's
last year
almost one. He will be one by the time this airs.
Yeah, that's crazy. It's crazy. Don't tell Becca.
That's right.
Yeah, for us, what we usually do is, I mean, it was different in the past years because we would have our Christmas programs on Wednesdays, typically, or at least one of them. And so the Advent service would have been the program, so we were here for that. So that was kind of our tradition. It has been since we've been here in Vegas and since Beck and I have been at Lamb of God. But now that we have Malachi, we're definitely much more, I think, intentional about what we do and the way that we do things, especially when it comes to faith and being the example for him. And so I definitely see the more traditional side of us coming out, of attending the Wednesday services faithfully, at least as our schedules allow us to do, right? And doing some more of those things. I think Becca bought an Advent calendar for him, so we'll probably. It's one of those things where she probably told me about it and said, "Yeah, we're going to do this." And I said, "Sounds good," and put it in the back of my brain. So I will recap that in one of the coming episodes if we do that or not.
One of those. My mind is occupied by football and school and football, and so I don't have space for. Right. So I think we should probably have done this first, but when we think about Advent, it's interesting. I've been reading a little bit to refresh my memory what on earth this is and how it started. I've seen different things about where the word comes from or where the word originated from. So I've always been told that the word Advent comes from some other word that means coming or arrival, but there were a few different things that said different things. So anyway, basically we usually say, hey, it's about the coming of Jesus, but there's this awesome thing that Advent is about two different things, or another article I said 4 different comings of Jesus, which let's play guess which ones it's talking about. Yeah, right. And that was that face you just made when I read the 4 comings of Christ. I said, oh, strange. What are you talking about? So they said the first, the incarnation of Jesus, the coming of Jesus in the word and sacraments. So coming down to earth then, and the second return of Jesus. And let's see, can I find the other one quickly here?
Was word and sacrament separate?
The prophetic coming that pointed to Christ's birth, then the actual birth, then the sacraments, and then his second coming. So like separating his birth, hey, he's going to come, and all the times maybe he came pre-incarnate, all those sort of things, and then when he actually came. So I had not ever thought about maybe 2 of those, except the 2 of, hey, Advent is usually when a time we get ready for Jesus first, remember his first birth, but we also get ready for his second coming. Mm-hmm. And so that leads into one of the things that I love most about Advent is that by and large, I think Advent does really well at balancing the tension of hope and reality of life. So Christmas is usually like, it's the happiest time of the year, right? Isn't that what the song says? The most wonderful time of the year is what the song says. But then you look at, I think the longer you live, the more that Christmas becomes tainted. And what I mean by that is the more hurt things you have in your life, the more expectations go unmet, the more the joy of Christmas is sucked out or away from you. And so Advent does a really good, beautiful job of balancing those 2 tensions, because on one hand, is the birth of Jesus the best thing? Yes, absolutely. He couldn't have died on the cross or risen from the dead if he hadn't been born. And so it's a beautiful, wonderful thing. But at the same time, there's this longing for something that's coming that hasn't actually came yet. And that in between phase, you see it in the way our hymns. So I love Advent hymns because they're all like mysterious, dirgy type. It's not that I'm a depressed person or I just like sad things, but it just speaks so clearly and truly, I think, to how life is. And it expresses that not just in words, but in like the actual sound of the songs. And so you think about, "O Come Emmanuel," it just sounds like sad or like something is missing. It's not the joy to the world level excitement. You think about "Savior of the Nations Come." Again, it's that same sort of, I feel like I need to sing, but I'm not going to. You can go look these up later. Just take my word for it if you don't, that they don't sound the most joyous and happy. And so I appreciate that because I think they're expressing, not maybe just in words, but in the sound that they're using, what Advent is about, and recognizing that into the midst of this broken world has come Jesus the first time, but we're also gathering to remember he's going to come again. And that's at least for me, that's a very hope-filled thing, a very thing that I need in the midst of, again, the craziest, most busy, chaotic, stressed out time of the year.
Yeah, and I was thinking about this when you were talking about, the longing, the waiting, the kind of the sad aspect of it, and trying to put myself in the shoes of, the people who have come before us, and what kind of like the 400 years of silence would have been like for the
Sure.
Jews. And I was thinking, is there any tie between that and what they would have experienced with the 400 years of silence, and how we long and continue to celebrate the waiting of the coming of the Lord. So yeah, and I think that the 400 years of silence, like that portion of it, and I love the church history and how you mentioned this after the fullness of time, right? And how like all of the history that happened before pointed to this one specific time, and then everything that has happened after still points back to that one specific point in time. And we don't need to go into the details of what all of that is, but he came at the perfect time in history to accomplish what he not only wanted to accomplish, but needed to accomplish on our behalf.
Right. And it's one of those, like, we don't think a lot about that phrase very often, or what it means that there was a time when people didn't know. Right. So there's a lot of big differences between the time between the Old Testament and the New Testament, the silence time. But that feeling of what's going to happen, when is it going to happen, how is it going to happen? We know some of those things, right? But yeah, that's a fair comparison. And you could say that's echoed in the sounds of the hymns too.
Well, that's what I was thinking, is like, are the hymns written in kind of that way? Because in the 400 years of silence, they weren't hearing from God through the prophets. And so they were trying to figure out, like, did we do something wrong? Like, what are we, why is God being quiet? And I think that there might be some, I don't know, going probably too deep here, but like looking back at their time in exile and all of that, and how God has used various things for his people to redeem them, right? And that's exactly what this is too. Christ coming down to redeem us. So there's a lot of parallels there that I think that we could explore if we had time, but
maybe not today. So let's talk about, maybe it's important to celebrate Advent, because for some people, this isn't a new thing, right? For some people, this is, I've done this every year of my life. What do you mean? But I know for some people, Advent is a new thing, and that it's not a practice that every church practices, is a way. I'll say it that way.
Yeah, that's crazy, because for us, it's normal, right?
Right.
So do you want me to answer that?
Yeah, well, okay. I can go first if you want, but I think it just trying to get to the why is it valuable for our life? Because somebody at the lay minister meeting last night again was saying how they were listening to something. I have to go ask them what it was, but they were listening to something that basically made the claim, they said, that churches are declining because what they're doing is not relevant for the world, which that's a pretty loaded statement. Again, I need to go watch whatever they're listening to. But if we're taking this assumption, hey, why should me, a person who's already busy to the brim and I have way too many other things to do and maybe even way more important things to do, why should I even care about Advent at all? Like, it's the point. What is it going to, maybe the question is, what is it going to do for me?
Well, I would say that the importance of Advent is the preparation of the heart and mind to be ready for what Christmas really is about. And I think that ties into being well prepared for whatever it is that we are doing, right? So without Advent, I'm trying to put myself in a situation where I have not done anything Advent-wise.
Sure.
To me, Christmas would be, yeah, it's Christmas. Jesus is born. Like, woohoo. Whereas, like, with Advent, you have this building anticipation. You have this period of time and reflection where you can look at what, like you said before, why would God choose to give us this gift, right? Because we don't deserve it. And so I think it's a time of reflection too. But if we are not preparing our hearts and mind for the coming of the Lord, we're going to miss it. Just right, again, my history brain is going back to like the first century. Well, it wouldn't have been the first century. Well, before the first century, the people around Jesus's birth time, let's put it that way.
That even called because the century would century zero beats me.
Yeah, I don't know. But if they're not prepared, then they missed it. Right.
Mhm.
And I think about that all the time. Like, what if I was alive during Jesus's time? Would I have been prepared to see him for who he is? I don't know. Right. Like, I would hope that I would have been. Now, knowing what I know, I would think that I would be ready. But again, it goes back to we need to be prepared. And so, how do we prepare ourselves? Well, we get into the Word. We listen to what God is telling us about the birth of Jesus and why we need Jesus and what he's going to do for us to redeem us, to reconcile us back to him, because we can't do it ourselves. And so if our heart and mind are not ready for that, then we are simply going to miss it. And I think that is true in the season too, that if we're not preparing our hearts and minds for what the meaning of the season is, then it's just another holiday.
Sure. You think about we heard from John 1 this past weekend in worship. His own people did not receive him, right? So the people that he came to did not receive him, which is, I shouldn't be laughing. That's not a funny thing. It's a sad thing. But you're echoing that. And then also Jesus himself talks about waiting, right? He talks about the end coming like a thief in the night, that we need to be alert and awake. And I feel deeply this, I need someone else to almost force me to get ready. Otherwise, I won't get ready under my own power and volition, right? That's I think the impetus of hey, we celebrate Advent because unless someone is going to help us do it, we won't naturally choose to do this sort of thing, right? As much as we might take seriously our faith, as much as we might say following Jesus is the most important thing we could do with our life, that there's real value in someone saying, stop, this is coming. We're going to get ready for said thing, which is so different than how we just live life in general. A lot of it is fire, aim, ready, or something like that. It's not a ready, aim, fire sort of thing. And so this is a great time when we say, hey, we as the church around the world are going to intentionally set aside time to prepare to be ready for Jesus. I just want to go a little bit on that phrase, like what does it mean to like prepare? Because I've heard this too. I've heard the phrase, we have to prepare to welcome Jesus. We have to prepare to be ready for his coming. And I like how you just talk about it from the sense of, I need to like recognize this is why it's happening, but it's to prepare is also just to anticipate. Because I'm wanting to do everything the best, most right way. And I've always really struggled with that phrase. Like, how on earth do I prepare for this? Like, what do you mean I have to prepare for Jesus' birth? Well, he's already been born. How do I need to prepare for his birth again? So I've been so caught up on, I think, that phrase of like being properly and rightly prepared, that maybe I've lost the simple, it's just looking forward to it and getting excited about it. Because if you don't go to a church that does Advent, I'm assuming you're probably singing Christmas songs now because it's after Thanksgiving, right? So in your worship service, I'm assuming you're singing some sort of Jesus, Christmas, something. But even that, if it's like full blast Christmas, if you're singing Joy to the World and it's December 3rd, I don't know, like the embodying and the waiting of what we're living in now and what we're waiting for in the future too. Like you're missing that first part, because again, you said it right earlier, the 400 years of silence maybe is a great equivalent, because there was waiting. It wasn't just a boom. When Chapel Today talked about, which is probably way too deep for K through fifth graders, but we talked about how in the Garden of Eden, God promised Jesus. And so thousands of years ago, God promised Jesus was going to be born. And they had to wait a long time, even though there's a really fun, and then I'll stop talking, there's a really fun thing about Eve, that her first son, she says, look, I have gotten a son, I think is what it says. And some people interpret that saying that Eve thinks she's born the Savior already. Like, my first kid, God told me my offspring is going to bruise the heel, strike the head of the serpent. All right, here he is, right here. So there's a great sense in which we as people are just horrible and awful and miserable at waiting. And so to be told, you must wait, things are not done, they're not ready, and so wait, I think is a helpful, at least for me, who needs someone to help. And that's somewhat ironic that it's my job to do this sort of thing, but it also helps me in my own faith, even though I'm planning Christmas Eve worship this Friday, the 5th of December. So I'll be writing Christmas Eve and day worship well in advance, but it also helps me get ready for those things as I have to think about them in advance.
Yeah, I like the longing and the waiting aspect of it. And I kind of tie that into the act of giving and receiving gifts at Christmas time too. So we long to give, and we do not like to wait to receive, right? That is kind of a challenging part.
Yeah, absolutely.
And so, yeah, I just tie that into it, that it is difficult for us to wrap our mind around that and to be patient. But I think it's another good reminder this Advent season too, that it's all about God's timing and not ours. All right. So your story, Eve thought that here's the Savior. Well, no, you're gonna miss it. You're gonna miss him by a few thousand years, maybe. So I think that, yeah, it's just another good reminder that where we need to place our faith, our hope, and in our reliance is not on what we or the world is telling us, right? There's a ton of things, Christmas, that can take us away from the true reason that we celebrate this holiday season anyways. So there's another good reason for going to Advent and doing Advent services and doing Advent devotions, is to drown out the noise of the world in the preparation, the longing, the waiting.
I was reading an article on the Gospel Coalition, which has a lot of really good stuff on it. And it was talking about where the history of Advent was. And it was making some sort of claim that Christians have decided to not instead of trying to rail against Santa and materialism, they just do a different thing entirely. And I'm always in favor of not just bashing things or not just critiquing things. Sure, we need to speak when we need to speak, but we also need to offer the world an alternative, and that this is a very much deeper, more meaningful alternative than gift giving, yes, than the secular sort of Christmas bells and holidays and whatever. Even Christmas lights, maybe, right? I'm sure you could talk about Jesus being the light of the world, et cetera, but I thought that was a very compelling way to think about, hey, sure, we could go and fight that culture war if you want to, or you could just say, hey, I'm just going to live by faith and do this thing and say, hey, I'm going to get myself ready, and I want you to come along with me as we're getting ready to remember Jesus' birth and get ready for his second coming as well.
Yeah, and I like that you say, I want you to come along with me, right?
Mm-hmm.
That it's not just it doesn't just need to be a personal thing, but that we should spend time together in fellowship with our preparation too. Or it's just like anything else. We've talked about this in previous episodes, right? We were meant to be with people. Even the introverts like me were meant to be with people. And so it's, yeah. And I think that was kind of going back to what we started the episode with, right? That was one of the things that I do remember very fondly was the actual Advent dinner and being in fellowship with church members and my friends and my family that were there too. And so I think that's an important part of the Advent season as we are getting ready, that we are spending time together, that we are, as the church, that we are gathering with each other so that we can worship and glorify God for this gift that we've been given, because again, we don't deserve it. And
Right.
I know that we keep landing on certain talking points, but it's just so true.
And I think there's a healthy, I think it's, again, okay, which kind of comes back to the duty versus desire thing that we talked about a long time ago. But there's a sense in which, don't take this the wrong way, anyone, that I don't want to make time to eat here. It's more inconvenient, even if someone is cooking it, right? Because you got to load the kids up. You got to bring them over here. You got to deal with them running around. Like, no, part of me doesn't want to do that. But there are certain things in life where even if I don't want to do them, once I'm doing them and have done them, I go, oh man, I'm so grateful I did this. I'm so glad I made it work.
Yep.
And so it's that idea of like, we sometimes need to be invited. We could use the word told, but invited, strongly encouraged, highly suggested and recommended to do certain things because they're good for us. And those meals, whether they're in a fellowship hall, a church basement, a gym, a cafeteria, wherever, are beautiful things, because even on a Sunday, not everybody stops and goes to fellowship after worship. Not everybody has that time to give. But as we gather, if you come, you've got a whole hour. And unless you're really good at having small talk about nothing important, usually that means you end up talking about things that are actually important. And you have meaningful conversations with those people that you either see a lot or don't see a lot. And so it's a beautiful thing that as a family of faith, of people who love each other and love the Lord, that we get to gather in that way and be with each other too. So very well said. Very well said. I'm curious what other questions you have for us about Advent. Maybe we'll cover them next week, but just wanted to give you a lowdown on our calendar for the next coming week. So this will come out on the 12th of December. We'll do one more in December on the 19th, and then we will take a week off for Christmas, that 26th there. And then we're going to do two, call them shorter episodes, where we'll look at not a report, but two different articles that we have for you that maybe I think reframe the new year in a very different light, that we will share with you those first 2 weeks in January. So we'll still be here, maybe albeit in a little bit more brief and a little bit more shorter of a way that way, just with our schedules and needing to and having to and desiring to spend time with family, all those sort of things. We won't have time to record as much. So anyway, that's the sort of road plan from us coming into Christmas and into the new year. But as always, we're glad that you're here, glad that you've taken the time to join us around the well that is Jesus. And I think today we've drunk deeply of what the first candle usually is: hope. Hope for the future for what Jesus not only has done and will and is promised to do in the future as well. So, as always, like, subscribe, share, etc., for those that you love who could benefit from this. But otherwise than that, we'll see you next week as we gather around the well that is Jesus. We'll see you.